He grew up between small-town fields and an island shore, a boy obsessed with stories of pilots and warriors with the ocean's edge as a compass. Jason Redman's life appears simple at first, a childhood threaded with disruption and determination, a family shaped by military legacy, and a young man drawn to extremes. This was the start of a path that would bend from surf and small-town football fields to the shock of combat, to a wound that almost silenced him, and to a relentless search for redemption. Born in Ohio and raised partly amid tobacco farms and island storms, Jason found in the natural world a teacher: heat, cold, the unpredictability of weather and water. His grandfather's war stories, a pilot who'd survived being shot down, lingered like a shape in family lore. Those early impressions were not grand gestures, but quiet fingerprints, a fascination with military life, an appetite for challenge, and a willingness to keep showing up when others would give up. It would be those small, repeated choices, to test, to try, to persist, that made a young recruit who once felt unlikely to succeed become something else entirely. He was not born a natural athlete. He was the underdog, the kid who got knocked around on football fields and learned resilience in the crucible of adolescent indignity. But the same grit that made him return to the recruiter's office after being turned away, the same stubbornness that pushed him into the delayed entry program and toward buds, would become the engine of his life. A counselor once dismissed him. He came back anyway. For Jason, joining the Navy and aiming for the SEALs was less a career decision than a promise to himself, to test whether the man in the mirror could become the man he admired. Buds taught him how small the line is between triumph and failure. There were nights when the cold and the monotony dug into his bones, when breath became a currency and each stroke of the pool counted. He learned that Hell Week is less a single event than a series of minute betrayals. You think you know yourself, and then you find out you don't. He also learned to live with contradiction. Part wild, youthful partying gave way to the discipline and quiet focus that real leadership demands. Those early contradictions would shape him, sometimes a strength, sometimes a liability. When he first deployed to South America, Colombia was not the cinematic battlefield he'd imagined. It was a place of rusted hospitals and desperate need, children burned by accident, communities living on the margins, and an insurgency that used the riverbanks as a line of fire. One moment he remembers is taking a badly burned child to a clinic that barely had bandages. That small human scene, a child in a dim clinic, is the memory of war that education doesn't teach. The way conflict mixes with poverty, the moral immediacy of help, and the raw reality that sometimes rescue is all you can manage. Those early missions were as much about building trust as they were about tactics, and they taught him how quickly a training lesson becomes life or death in the field. He arrived as a young operator, and like many young operators, he had an edge, confidence that sometimes slid toward arrogance. An early career episode, throwing an award in anger when recognition didn't match expectation, became a turning point. It was not the medal that mattered, but the mirror it held up. A lesson about ownership, humility, and what it means to lead. Safe leaders protect their men. Good leaders let experience teach them how to do it better. Over time, under the guidance of seasoned officers, Jason learned to listen, to follow when he must, and to step forward when his men needed a steady hand. In the summer of those dark years, the echo of one mission reached him: Operation Red Wings, and the desperate, messy aftermath of a force that had been struck and the quick reaction attempts that followed. His unit watched from the air as a helicopter went down. A moment of helplessness watched through a window. The event became more than a news item. It was a lesson in timing, in the impossible choices of rescue, and in the way decisions echo for years. The grief of Red Wings lingered in the SEAL community and informed doctrine and the unspoken understanding of risk in every future dispatch. Iraq taught him about chaos in the close quarters of city streets and stairwells. In one operation, a stairwell became a killing field, a house held hidden explosives, a rooftop concealed an enemy presence. They adopted a desperate plan: fall back, call fire, survive. On one night, the firefight escalated into a moment that would test the thin line between control and catastrophe. A danger-close fire mission was requested, denied, requested again, and finally authorized under a calculus of survival. Rounds fell, dust and detonation washed over him, and when he came to, he discovered his face had been struck by a bullet that would change everything. He lay in a gunfight that lasted half an hour, while teammates fought and called for extraction. The details are harrowing: shrapnel and rounds, a helmet perforated, side plates that, because he wore them that night, saved part of him. The memory of the firefight is not a single camera shot, but a long corridor of smells, noise, and the weight of being alive while others were not. He was evacuated under conditions that made every movement a calculus of pain and hope. Medevac birds, ICU flights, a tracheotomy, and wired jaws, instruments that keep you alive while you learn to breathe in a new body. There is a practical horror to recovery: the trach, the mucus, the constant cleaning, and a quieter psychological reckoning. Somewhere in the hospital corridors and the slow nights of recovery, there was a moment, a sign, that shifted his compass. It was not an epiphany in a single line, but a convergence, a recognition that survival without change is a waste, that leadership without accountability is hollow. He returned to a world that looked the same and felt different, and he chose to make the difference count. The second act of his life is about repair and teaching. He confronted mistakes, his own ego, choices that had cost him and endangered others, and pulled the threads of those lessons into a new mandate: to teach, to lead better, and to own the hard truths. Where once the mission was the only story, afterward the mission became a schoolroom. Where he had once been a young man pushing to be somebody, he learned that the truest measure of success is the men you raise after you. He worked to build systems, to simplify risk assessment, to ensure the next group had the tools and conscience he wished he'd had earlier. Jason Redman's life is not merely the tally of missions and medals, it is a study in transformation, the journey of a man who has been both the weapon and the wounded, both the student and the teacher. He began as a restless kid with something to prove, driven by pride and adrenaline, but emerged as a leader forged through humility, pain, and purpose. A boy with broken pieces who rebuilt himself with the same stubbornness that once drove him toward the sea, now stands as proof that growth can come from the hardest kind of failure, the kind that nearly ends you. The wounds remain, as they always do, physical scars that map his face and body, and invisible ones that still echo in quiet moments. But instead of hiding them, he wears them openly, not as trophies, but as truth. Each scar is a reminder that courage isn't the absence of fear or injury, it's the decision to keep moving despite them. Through those marks, he found a new kind of strength, one grounded not in invincibility, but in vulnerability. Redman teaches that leadership is not the absence of failure, but the willingness to own it, to stand before others and admit where you went wrong so that they might not repeat the same mistakes. He believes redemption is not an abstract concept reserved for speeches and ceremonies. It is a daily discipline, a series of choices made in silence to serve, to mentor, to make better the institutions that once broke you. In doing so, he has turned pain into guidance and regret into resolve. That is his sign, not a single banner hung in a hospital hallway, but a living message etched into every talk, every book, every soldier or civilian he helps rebuild. His legacy is not survival alone, but what he chose to do with it, to turn suffering into service, scars into lessons, and a near-death moment into a second life devoted to others. Jason Redman's story is, at its core, human. Bravery riddled with error, survival braided with responsibility, and a hard-won humility that became his legacy. He reminds us that the bravest thing is not to arrive unscarred, but to come back, look at the damage, and build something that helps others endure. If there is a single image that holds his story, it is this: a wounded man who learned that the work of healing could become the work of a lifetime.